This is the Evergreen Empire.
Green grow the forests and fair flow the streams. The gentle deer grazes, the wild blossom gleams. From ocean wave raging to mountain serene, all nature's proclaiming our land's evergreen.
Welcome to Columbia Conversations. I'm Feliks Banel, editor of Columbia Magazine for the Washington State Historical Society. On this episode, we go down on the farm with Jennifer Mortensen, Outreach Director of the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, and learn more about the statewide Heritage Barn Grant Program.
There's a bit of kind of nostalgia and romance, even if you didn't grow up on a farm. I think seeing a big, beautiful barn just represents the past in a way that some other historic buildings don't quite capture.
I spoke with Jennifer Mortensen by phone from her office in Seattle at the historic Stimson Green Mansion, and I started off by asking her about the Heritage Barn Initiative.
The Heritage Barn Initiative was established back in 2007, making this our seventh round of grant funding because it's a two-year cycle. It goes with the Washington State capital budget is where the grant funding comes from. And so the program is actually a program of the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, and they contract with us, the Washington Trust, who's a statewide nonprofit, to run the program. So it's a pretty great sort of partnership because we're able to work with the state and also travel around and meet a bunch of new folks that we normally wouldn't have a connection to necessarily. And one of the funnest parts about the program, in my opinion, as I've been working with it the last couple of rounds, is that we run into barn owners who, wouldn't consider themselves preservationists. They say, "Oh, I'm not a historic preservationist. That I wouldn't identify with that, title or something like that." And they say, "I just want to save my grandfather's barn," or, "I've lived on, my family's on this property for generations." And I get to kind of smile and say, well, that does make you a historic preservationist. That's what it's all about. And so it's really great to be able to just have those conversations and share those values and meet new people. So essentially, as I mentioned, the grant money comes from the state capital budget, and we have about $450,000 that is devoted to the barn program and the same to actually a historic cemetery program. And we have barn owners apply for those grants, and we review those applications and are hoping to make those announcements by the end of the year. The barn owners need to be on the Washington State or the Heritage Barn Register. So that in addition to the grant funding, which was set aside back in 2007, it also created this register as a sort of benchmark for historic barns, and it's a fairly inclusive register. It's not quite as rigorous as some of the other historic registers, but it essentially makes sure that the barns that are applying for grants have a lot of historic character and materials remaining and haven't, undergone some really dramatic changes like, all new vinyl siding or something like that.
How many barns are on that register, and then how many you think would qualify around the state? Is there any kind of survey of what the universe of barns in Washington is like?
So yeah, there's not been a survey, unfortunately, of all barns in the state. That would be a pretty big list. But as far as barns that are listed, 751 is the latest count by the spreadsheet from the state that I got this week.
And do you know if the geographic distribution sort of reflects either sort of like where the agricultural hotspots were in the state over the last 150 years, or is it sort of uniformly distributed? Is it more in kind of where the urban areas have encroached on barns, or is it possible to characterize where the where the scatter plot would look like on a map of Washington of these 751 barns?
Yeah, so there's some concentrations in sort of the Skagit Valley, and I think Spokane and Pierce counties also have a really high concentration. The state actually puts out a map every year of the concentrations by county of those barns on that list. A couple of years ago, we finally passed at least one barn in every county. So there's a couple of more rural counties that I'm sure have a lot more barns, but maybe just haven't gotten the word about the register. And some folks aren't interested, and that's fine. But I do try to let them know that it is honorary only. It's non-regulatory, so there's no controls or restrictions or anything that goes along with the register. It's just honorary only. Yeah. And a lot of folks really like that. They like the idea of someone recognizing the history of their barn, of their farm and family, and just we send out plaques that say Heritage Barn built such and such year, and it's been a really positive program from that standpoint.
And what is it about barns? Because I know a lot of people, I drive back and forth from Seattle to Spokane or up and down I-5, and you always sort of look over and see barns, and there's something that's sort of, I don't know, oddly compelling, or maybe not even oddly compelling, just compelling about barns. What is it about barns that seem to capture the imaginations of so many people, you think?
You're absolutely right, and I'm not sure I can quite put an exact finger on it. I think that there's a bit of kind of nostalgia and romance, even if you didn't grow up on a farm. I think seeing a big, beautiful barn just represents the past in a way that some other historic buildings don't quite capture, because I think agriculture has changed so dramatically in the last few generations that these barns that symbolize a really different way of life that not a lot of people experience firsthand. I think that might be part of it, and it's been really interesting because you're absolutely right that everybody loves barns, and that's part of the reason this program I think has been really successful and popular. It's been like I said, it was established over a decade ago, and we advocate for our state representatives to continue to fund it, and even through the recession, this program was funded, and it also comes with these really great before and after photos, which people really love, and so it's a pretty unifying and an interesting program from that standpoint. And even people, I think, who live in urban areas are sort of fascinated by sort of that rural imagery and history. So there's kind of a nice bridge, I guess, of different lifestyles and philosophies between urban and rural, which is pretty refreshing. So
what you're saying is barns in this day of political divide, barns are the one thing that most Washingtonians can agree on?
I think so. If only we could find a way to capitalize on that goodwill somehow in politics, that would be great. But we like to say that this program is nonpartisan in that we certainly serve all areas of the state, and when we do review the applications, geographic distribution is one of the elements that the committee takes into account. So there's a variety of factors, but we do try to get a good spread all around the state and get that money out there in a kind of a variety of counties, both west and east and central.
And can you give me some examples of some projects that have been funded in the past to sort of help inspire people about what amounts they might expect or what sorts of preservation work can be done to a barn with the funds available through the program?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So The committee does tend to prioritize projects that will go toward long-term stabilization and sort of long-term care. So that generally includes things like foundation work or structural stabilization. We had a lot of roof replacements, things like that are kind of some of those main building features. The projects that they prefer, those are the projects that they prefer the grant funds to go directly towards. So it is a matching program, which means that for every dollar the state puts toward a project, the owner has to match that with another dollar. So ultimately, as people are preparing their grant applications, they can only request up to half of their overall budget that they're presenting for their project, which is, again, something that I'm happy to kind of help people navigate and figure out as they're filling out their application. Those kind of big structural or roofing pieces are what the committee tends to prefer to prioritize. If there's other work like siding repair or window and door repair, I generally recommend folks use that as their match because that's important too. But have those big priorities up front with the grant funds, and then the sort of smaller pieces as the matching for the grant funds. So we have gotten applications ranging from just a couple of $1,000s, and our highest grant was, I believe, $50,000. I would say our average is between 20 and 25. And because the committee wants to try to spread out the money as much as possible, while also, making a big impact in the projects that are happening, I would recommend people not ask for more than around 40, just because that tends to sort of be a lot of the overall grant funds that are available. So I'm, again, happy to work with people as they're putting their budgets together to sort of get a proposal that I think the committee will really feel is both a good project and a valuable use of funds, but not so much that it seems a little bit disproportionate to the overall grant funds available.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I like the approach you guys take, where it's not incentivized, but you're helping people submit the best application possible and increasing their chances of getting their project funded. That's not all funders are like that. So it's nice you guys do that.
Well, absolutely. And I would personally rather get a bunch of really great applications than have to choose between ones that aren't put together well or are confusing or unclear. So it doesn't take a lot of time, I think, for me up front to just give people some advice and help as they put their paperwork together, rather than try to have to figure out later by guessing what they maybe meant or what the project's actually going to look like. So we asked for a good amount of details, I think, in the application, and that's hopefully to cut down on the sort of unknowns and questions as the committee reviews. But yeah, I'm happy to help out. People are welcome to call, email.
That's great. And then are there particular, since 2007, are there particular barns that you know of in either any part of the state, Western Washington, Eastern Washington, that are real sort of success stories or real kind of quintessential examples of how this program has worked, and a barn with a particularly interesting history?
Yeah, we have had the good fortune of having some really outstanding projects. One that comes to mind immediately is the Plucker Barn out in Walla Walla County. It's this fairly modest-sized barn, and it was getting to be in disrepair, and it's been in the Plucker family for generations. And they actually had done some foundation work themselves, and then applied for a grant to do quite a bit more work, a lot of siding, some other stuff. And they took that money and ran with it and did a bunch of their own their own labor, which in-kind labor donated to the project can count towards your match as you're putting your budget together, and actually made it into a really wonderful family project. And they had multiple generations working on that barn, and it became this really great experience for the entire family to contribute to preserving their family's history. So we actually did a great story about it in our magazine called This Place, and folks can read all about it, see great pictures, and we actually try to do a barn feature in every single magazine. So each quarter, if people are interested in reading about all these cool projects that are happening, we obviously can't feature every one of them, as we only have 4 issues a year, but we try to pick some of those really great, inspiring ones to feature and to show off in our publication.
All right, Jennifer Mortensen with the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Columbia Conversations, and we look forward to seeing more and more wonderful heritage barns along the roadways and byways of Washington State.
We do too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to Jennifer Mortensen for speaking with me for this episode of Columbia Conversations from the Washington State Historical Society. For more information about the Heritage Barn Grant Program and upcoming application deadlines, visit preservewa.org. For more information about Columbia Magazine or to subscribe, please visit washingtonhistory.org. I'm Feliks Banel.